Welcome to the Balanced Badass Podcast, the show for multitaskers determined to stay balanced and badass without losing their minds. Every week, we help you manage your overflowing calendar and household, making sure you still have time to breathe, laugh, and savor that much-needed glass of wine at the end of the day. Think of this podcast as your weekly dose of practical advice, humor, and tough love, just like catching up with a friend who really gets it. I'm Tara Kermiet, your personal growth coach, helping you handle how was your day without a meltdown. Now let's get into today's episode. All right. Hey, welcome back to the Balanced Badass Podcast. If you're new here, first of all, welcome. Second, let me tell you right now that this is not the place for fluff or toxic positivity. I'm all about real talk, practical advice, and the occasional kick in the ass, delivered always with love, of course. So today we're going to talk about something I know is going to hit home for a lot of you. You see, burnout doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's not just about you working too much or feeling overwhelmed. It's also about who's in your corner, or let's be real, who isn't. And that's what we're getting into today, because building your burnout-resistant support squad is so important to your success and to you getting out of this burnout mess or just building that burnout-resistant life. So listen, if you've ever found yourself crying in the car after work or rage texting your bestie about how your boss thinks urgent means everything, then you're not alone. But you can't fix burnout by just taking bubble baths, venting in the group chat, or by booking another yoga retreat. You need people, the right people. I'm specifically talking about 5 types of people who can help you build what I call a burnout-resistant career. These are the people who make you feel like you've got backup in this whole adulting thing. They're the ones who help you stay grounded when everything feels like it's falling apart, or when you're just 2 meetings away from Googling how to move to a deserted island. Not that I've done that before or anything, just saying. I can practically hear you saying, Tara, I don't have time to figure out my own shit, let alone deal with other people. But please stick with me here, because getting these 5 people on your team is gonna change everything for you. Let me tell you, friend, that whole lone wolf thing, it's a sham. The grind it out alone, hustle till you make it, pull yourself up by your bootstraps narrative, it's toxic garbage. You don't need to be a martyr to be successful. And yet so many of us buy into this idea that asking for help is some kind of weakness. Let me tell you why I care so much about this. I grew up as an only child. And if you're an only child, or you know one, or maybe you have one, you'll get this. You get really good at being self-sufficient. You learn how to entertain yourself, solve your own problems, and honestly, kind of carry the weight of the world on your tiny little shoulders. And it's not that I didn't have amazing parents, I did. But when you're an only child, there's no sibling to pass the buck to, no one to share the blame or help figure stuff out. You're it. You learn early on to just handle things yourself and rely on yourself. So fast forward to adulthood, and guess what? That fierce independence turned into a major double-edged sword for me. When I hit burnout, I didn't know how to ask for help. Scratch that. I actually didn't even know that I could ask for help. In my mind, I thought I just had to muscle through it on my own because that's what I'd always done. But shocker, that didn't really work out for me. I had a job that I thought I loved, but the stress was eating me alive. I remember waking up one morning with a migraine so bad that I thought, this is it. This is how I go. Turns out it wasn't a brain tumor, thankfully. It was burnout. And the migraines just kept coming. Then the panic attacks. And then one day I started throwing up before meetings. Super glamorous, right? I convinced myself that I could fix it if I just worked harder, got more organized, or found the right self-help trick. So I read all the books, listened to all the podcasts, tried every meditation app I could find in the world. And I surrounded myself with motivational quotes like, you've got this. And did I have it? Nope, I sure did not. Not even close. It finally hit me one night. I couldn't fix burnout by myself. I needed people. Not just anyone, though. I needed the right people. People who would guide me, challenge me, and sometimes lovingly call me out on my own shit when I was making my own life harder, because I tend to do that. That's why this matters so much to me. I know what it's like to feel like you have to do it all alone, but I also know how transformational it is to realize that you don't. And that's what I want for you too. Okay, so let's talk about these 5 types of people. You might actually already have some of them in your life, and if you don't freak out. I'm going to give you some tips on how to find them. First up are role models. These are the people that you look up to, the ones who make you think, wow, how do they do that? They've got something you want. Maybe it's their confidence. Maybe it's the way they seem to glide through stress like they've got a force field around them. Maybe it's their ability to actually take their PTO without apologizing, logging in, or leaving a breadcrumb trail of just-in-case emails. And the thing is you don't actually have to know them personally. That's the beauty of it. Your role model could be someone famous like Brené Brown or Oprah. Or it could be your coworker, the one who has the uncanny ability to leave the office at 5 on the dot without a single ounce of guilt. You know, the one who doesn't even take their laptop home? Yeah, that person. They're magic, in my opinion. One of my role models is a former boss who had this energy about him that was just different. While the rest of us were running around trying to prove ourselves, he was over there casually saying things like, that meeting doesn't need me, or I'm leaving at 4 today to go to my kid's soccer game. He didn't apologize for it. Hell, he didn't even ask for permission. He just did it. And let me tell you, watching him operate was like seeing a mythical creature in the wild. At the time, I was always saying yes to everything, thinking it would make me look like a team player, or that it would prove my worth. But watching him say no so unapologetically, well, it flipped a switch for me. I realized that, wait a second, maybe I could do that too. And the crazy thing was that he wasn't just blowing off meetings or being difficult. In fact, he was highly respected because he knew his limits and he stuck to them. People trusted him because he only committed to what he could deliver. That's the kind of energy I wanted to bring into my own life. And here's where most people mess up with role models. They admire from a distance, but they never actually take action. So you sit there thinking about how much you love how they seem to have their shit together, but you don't ask yourself the next question. What can I learn from them and actually do differently? If your role model has a killer work-life balance, don't just envy them, study them. How do they manage their time? What habits or boundaries do they have that you don't? For example, maybe they're the queen of time blocking their calendar so they can focus on one task at a time. Or maybe they're really good at delegating or religiously scheduling their workouts. Try copying whatever is working for them to see if it works for you. But also remember that not everything will fit your life perfectly. The point isn't to become them. It's to take the principles that resonate and adapt them to your life. Another misconception about role models is that they have to be these high-profile people who are somehow above you in the hierarchy of life. But that's not right. Some of the best role models are the ones actually flying under the radar. I call them the quiet disruptors. I'll give you an example. So a while ago, I met a woman at a networking event who had this incredible energy. She told me that she sets one big, audacious goal every year and then builds her schedule around achieving it without overloading herself. What blew my mind wasn't the goal itself, and honestly, I can't even remember what her goal was, but it was the way she structured her time. She said no to anything that didn't serve her goal. What if we applied that approach to our own lives? So here's what I want you to do this week. Take some time to think about someone you admire. Maybe it's someone in your life, or maybe it's someone you've only seen on LinkedIn or YouTube, and ask yourself, what do I admire about them? What are they doing that I'm not? How can I experiment with one of their habits or behaviors this week? Now, don't just stop at thinking about it. Actually do something and see how it feels. Because role models are only as powerful as the action you take because of them. Sure, admiration is nice, but transformation is better. Now let's talk about mentors, because if role models are your inspiration, mentors are your guide. They're essentially like the GPS of your career, except they don't randomly yell recalculating when you take a wrong turn. Instead, they gently nudge you back on track before you end up completely stranded. A good mentor isn't just someone who gives advice. They're someone who knows you, like really knows you. They understand your goals, your quirks. And honestly, if they're a great mentor, they'll understand how much caffeine you need before you're functional. They're invested in your success not because they actually get something out of it, but because they genuinely want to see you thrive. One of my former colleagues is one of my greatest mentors. She and I had been in a lot of meetings together where everyone else in the meeting was trying to prove that they're the smartest person in the room. I know you've been in those rooms before too. I'd been doing what I always did back then, nodding along, taking copious notes, and keeping my mouth shut because I was terrified of saying the wrong thing. After one of those meetings, she pulled me aside and said how she'd noticed I was really good at spotting gaps in projects, but that I didn't speak up much in meetings. She then asked me why I didn't share more. Let me tell you, that question hit me like a ton of bricks. No one had ever pointed out something I was good at like that before. And I told her that I honestly don't speak up because I'm afraid I'll sound like an idiot most of the time. She didn't laugh or brush it off. She just nodded and said, "Hey, I used to feel the same way. I'd like to help you build your confidence." That conversation was the beginning of a mentorship that I didn't even realize I needed. She became someone who genuinely cared about helping me grow, not just as a colleague, but as a person. Here's how I see it. Your role model is like the North Star. They're shining brightly, showing you what's possible. But a mentor, they're the compass that helps you figure out how to get there. Role models inspire you from afar, but mentors are down in the trenches with you. They know the specifics of your situation, your goals, your obstacles, and yes, even that weird little habit you have of second guessing every decision. They're not just cheering you on, they're helping you map out the next steps. But how do you find a mentor without making it weird? Because please don't walk up to someone and say, "Will you be my mentor?" That's just really awkward for everyone involved. But think of someone in your orbit that you admire. Maybe it's a colleague, it could be a manager, or even someone you met at a networking event. And instead of asking them straight up to be your mentor, ask to pick their brain about a project you're working on, something specific, or for their perspective on a specific challenge that you're facing. People love to share their expertise when it's framed as a one-time ask for something very specific. And if the advice that they give you resonates with you, then keep the conversation going. Update them on your progress, either with the challenge or the project. Ask for their input on future decisions or future things that you're facing. And then before you know it, you've probably got yourself a mentor and in a more natural process. But you also have to remember that mentorship is a two-way street. So be sure to show them gratitude and let them know that their advice really did make a difference. People are more likely to invest in you if they feel appreciated and that you're equally invested in them. And I know you might just be tempted to Google your questions or ask ChatGPT for advice now that we're in this world of AI. But Google and AI don't know you. They don't know your strengths, they don't know your struggles, and they definitely don't know that dumpster fire of a boss that you're dealing with. Mentors bring human context. They help you tailor advice to your unique situation. Plus, they offer something no algorithm can: emotional support. Sometimes you just need someone to say, "You're not crazy, and here's how I dealt with the same thing." Okay, so the next person you need on your squad is a coach. And yes, I'm a little biased here because coaching is what I do, but I'm also a firm believer that everyone needs a coach at some point. They're not there to pat you on the back and tell you you're doing amazing. That's another role that we're going to talk about here in a little bit. They're there to help you figure out what you actually want and then hold you accountable for going after it. Think of it like this. Your brain is a messy closet full of old beliefs, doubts, and half-baked ideas. A coach is the person who comes in, hands you a trash bag, and says, "Let's sort this out." They help you identify what's worth keeping, like your values, your strengths, your big dreams, and what needs to go, like the limiting beliefs, the guilt, the people-pleasing habits. You might be wondering how coaching is different from therapy. And the way I explain it is that therapy is really more about healing, looking back to understand kind of where your patterns and where these wounds came from so that you can process them and then move forward. Coaching, on the other hand, is about growing. It's really forward focused. A coach isn't here to fully unpack your childhood or diagnose what's holding you back. We may get into some of that a little bit, but they're not here to fully do that. That's not their purpose. They're here to ask what's next and how do we get you there. And here's the part that makes coaching different from, say, venting to your best friend. Coaches will not let you wallow. They don't co-sign your excuses or let you stay stuck in your own BS. They challenge you, ask the hard questions, and push you to take action. It's not really about someone telling you what to do. It's mostly about someone helping you uncover what you already know deep down, but you haven't been able to articulate yet. Coaches don't have all the answers, but they're really good at helping you find them. For example, let's say you're stuck in a cycle of saying yes to everything because you're afraid of letting people down. A coach isn't going to say stop doing that. They're going to dig into why you feel that way. Maybe it's a people-pleasing habit you picked up in childhood. Maybe it's fear of being seen as uncommitted. Whatever it is, a coach helps you kind of unravel that and replace it with healthier patterns. But they also hold you accountable in a way that's equal parts supportive and no nonsense. If you tell a coach that you want to set boundaries, you better believe they're going to keep asking, how did that go, every time you meet. And if you didn't follow through, they're going to help you figure out why. They're not going to shame you, but they're going to make sure that you don't stay stuck in the same loop. When I coach people, one of the first things we do is figure out what's actually causing their burnout. 9 times out of 10, it's not just too much work. It's usually deeper stuff like misaligned values. Maybe you're doing work that doesn't feel meaningful to you. A lot of times it's lack of boundaries. So folks are saying yes to everything because they're afraid of disappointing people or looking incompetent, whatever the reason may be. And sometimes it's unrealistic expectations, like you're holding yourself to impossible standards and then beating yourself up for not meeting them. A coach helps you identify those patterns and then, more importantly, how to break them. The thing is, we're all too close to our own problems to see them clearly. It's like trying to read a book when you're holding it an inch from your face. Coaches help you zoom out a little bit and see the bigger picture. They're not emotionally tied to your decisions the way that you are, which means that they can help you make choices based on what's best for you, not what you're afraid of or what other people expect. And yes, I understand coaching is an investment. Whether it's a financial investment, a time commitment, or both, it can feel like a lot. But I think staying stuck is way more expensive. I mean, think about it. How much time and energy are you wasting trying to figure things out on your own? How many sleepless nights and stress-filled weekends could you avoid if you had someone in your corner helping you navigate it all? It's like hiring a personal trainer for your career and mental health. Sure, you could figure it out on your own eventually, but having someone guide you makes the process faster, smoother, and way less painful. And a lot of times a lot more fun because you're working with someone else. Okay, so maybe let's say you're sold on the idea of coaching, but you're wondering, where do you even find one? And that's a great question because the right coach really does make all the difference. Here's what I learned in my process. You got to look for someone who aligns with your goals. If you're dealing with burnout, find someone who specializes in burnout recovery, not just generic productivity hacks. If you're pivoting careers, maybe you want to look for a specific career coach. If you're pivoting careers or looking to pivot careers because of burnout, even better, try to find someone who focuses on burnout recovery and career coaching or career designing. You also want to check their vibe because coaching is super personal. You're going to be spending a lot of one-on-one time with this person, so you want to make sure that you feel comfortable being vulnerable with them. If their style doesn't click with you, it's okay to keep looking. I always said when I was looking for a therapist, and this fits for coaches too, that searching for a therapist really felt like dating because you kind of have the first date, you're nervous, you don't know what to expect, you're checking out the vibe, seeing if you get along. Sometimes you need a couple dates to figure out if things are going to work between you and that person. And then you kind of decide how you're going to move on with the relationship. The same as with coaching, right? Like you want to make sure that your vibe matches the vibe of the individual that you're working with, or is the vibe that you're looking for. That could be your situation too. And you also want to ask about their approach. The best coaches aren't going to tell you what to do. They're actually just there to help you figure it out yourself. So yeah, they're going to challenge you, but they're also going to meet you where you are. But you also want to know, how do they approach their work? Do they have specific frameworks that they talk about and that they work through with you? Are there specific theories that they're using behind the scenes? These things, especially if they're important to you, you're going to want to know up front so you know if it's a relationship worth pursuing. So maybe this week, try Googling burnout recovery coaches near me or online, because you may just want a virtual coach. Or maybe schedule your first call with one, because many of us offer them. I actually have one as well. I offer a 15-minute kind of what I call a stress SOS call, or I offer a 30-minute consultation, essentially, which can be kind of your vibe check with me to see if we even mesh well. Or in general, you can feel free to DM me on Instagram, because this is literally what I do. But I also want to make sure that you find the right fit for you. So whatever I can do to help you, whether that's working with me or referring you to another coach, I'm happy to help however I can. Coaching ultimately isn't about fixing you, because, friend, you're not broken. It's about helping you figure out what you want, why you want it, and how to go after it without losing yourself in the process. All right, that's my soapbox moment for the day. Go out there, find a coach, get unstuck. Okay, now I promised we would talk about this role next, and that is cheerleaders. And I want to talk about that because honestly, these are kind of the unsung heroes in your life. They're not just there to hand you the gold stars and say good job and pat you on the back and make you feel good, but they're the people who remind you of who you are when you've forgotten, because burnout makes you question everything. You start thinking, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. Maybe I can't handle this. Maybe I've peaked. It's like that quiet little voice in the back of your head that gets louder every time something goes wrong. And that's where your cheerleaders come in. They're the ones who shut that voice down with, "Are you kidding me? You're a badass. Stop doubting yourself." Sometimes they're the only ones who can break through when you're in that spiral. They see you clearly even when you're stuck in the fog. For me, my cheerleaders have shown up in the most unexpected moments. Like when I was trying to decide if I should quit my job, convinced that I was going to be a complete failure if I did, one of my closest friends, Brenna, encouraged me to follow my heart and throw my faith into what she knew I could achieve. That simple belief shifted everything for me. That's what cheerleaders do. They don't necessarily fix the problem for you, but they remind you that you're capable of solving it. Here's an important distinction. Cheerleaders aren't there to feed you fluff or blow smoke up your ass, okay? They're not the yes people who agree with everything that you do. Instead, they're people who genuinely see your potential and they just help you believe in it again. A good cheerleader will even call you out when you're being too hard on yourself, but they'll also be honest with you. If you're taking on too much, they might tell you so. They might say that you're amazing, but you're also human and remind you to delegate. Cheerleaders lift you up, but they also keep you grounded. I was a cheerleader, and there were different roles for cheerleaders when we did stunts. You had the base folks who were there to lift the flyer, is what it was called. So they were there on the bottom holding the other cheerleader up. But then you also had the spotter who was there to kind of catch you if you fell. That's what the cheerleader in your life does. And they come in all shapes and forms. Hell, they could be your mom, who's always telling you how proud she is, even when you feel like a mess. They could be your best friend who sends you memes at midnight just to make you laugh. Or they could be that one coworker who notices the little things you do and says, "Hey, that presentation was a killer." Look around your life. Who are the people who genuinely want the best for you? Maybe it's someone you haven't connected with in a while, like an old friend or a supportive coworker. Reach out to them. Let them know what you're going through, because sometimes we don't even realize who our cheerleaders are until we open up. And if you really feel like there's no one, be a cheerleader for someone else. I know that sounds backward, but trust me, it works. Start by hyping up a friend, a colleague, or even a stranger on social media. Tell them they're doing great, because that positivity, it has a funny way of coming back to you. Finally, let's get into sponsors. While mentors guide you and help you navigate your career, sponsors are the ones who actively advocate for you. They're not just behind the scenes giving advice, they're in the room when decisions are being made. Here's how I like to explain it. If your career is a movie, mentors are kind of like the directors. They help you refine your craft, They help you make better decisions and prepare for the big scene. And sponsors are more like the producers. They're the ones getting your name on the marquee, making sure the right people are paying attention to you, and greenlighting the opportunities that take your career to the next level. Another way of saying it is this: mentors are focused on your growth, while sponsors are focused on your visibility. Mentors and coaches give you the tools. Sponsors give you the stage. That's why you need all of these roles. You can be the most talented person in the room or in the world. But if no one knows it, you're not going to get the opportunities you deserve. Sponsors make sure people know. The magic of a sponsor lies in their influence. They're usually more senior, well-connected, and respected in your industry or your organization. When they vouch for you, it carries weight. It's like someone putting a neon sign above your head that says, "This person's a rock star, pay attention to them." And here's the thing: sponsors shouldn't and usually don't just vouch for anyone. They're putting their own reputation on the line when they advocate for you. That's why earning the trust and respect of a sponsor is such a big deal. But you don't just get a sponsor by asking, "Will you sponsor me?" That's not really how it works with this. Sponsors typically find you. And how do they find you? By seeing your work and believing in your potential. Your job is to make it easy for someone to sponsor you. That means showing up consistently. Sponsors are looking for reliability. They want to know that you'll deliver. You also want to take ownership. If you're on a project, own it. Show that you can handle responsibility without needing to be micromanaged. And they also are looking for someone who brings value. Be the person who solves problems, offers creative solutions, and makes things better just because that's the person you are. One of my favorite pieces of advice is act like the job you want, not the job you have. Sponsors are drawn to people who are already showing leadership potential, even if they're not in leadership roles yet. That's a whole nother soapbox for me, because leadership to me is a process, not a role. But we'll talk about that probably in another episode later on. The thing with burnout is that it often happens when you feel trapped. Like no matter how hard you work, you're not making progress. And your sponsors can break that cycle by opening doors that you didn't even know were there. They can help you move into roles that align better with your strengths, give you access to opportunities that energize you, and connect you with people who can support your growth. If you're ready to attract a sponsor, here's what you can do this week. First, you can identify potential sponsors. Who are the people in your organization or network who could have influence? Pay attention to senior leaders, decision makers, and well-connected colleagues, and just make a list of these individuals. Then focus on visibility. How can you make your work more visible to these people? Maybe it's speaking up more in meetings like my colleague encouraged me to do. It might be volunteering for a more high-profile project, or it's sharing your accomplishments more on LinkedIn. Then you got to focus on building authentic relationships. Start connecting with these potential sponsors in a natural and genuine way. Don't just network for the sake of it. You've got to find ways to add value to their work, whether it's offering insights, collaborating on a project, or just being a great team player. Here's what I love about sponsors. Their impact goes far beyond a single opportunity. A good sponsor doesn't just open one door. They open a series of doors that can change the whole trajectory of your career. Here's the thing we need to clear up right now. Burnout doesn't mean you're weak, lazy, or bad at your job. I need you to hear this because so many people think or feel like burnout is some kind of personal failing. But burnout happens because the system you're operating in, your workload, your environment, your boundaries, or lack thereof, that system is unsustainable. Burnout happens when you're stuck in a cycle of doing too much with too little support for too long. And let's be real, that's a recipe for disaster no matter how strong or capable you are. The truth is, you're not supposed to do it all alone. In fact, the whole idea that you have to is one of the biggest lies that we've been sold. The people in your life, the role models, mentors, coaches, cheerleaders, and sponsors. They're your safety net. They're the ones who remind you that asking for help isn't weakness, it's wisdom. They're the ones who help you step out of survival mode and into thriving mode. Think about it like this. You wouldn't try to climb Mount Everest without a team, right? You'd have guides, Sherpas, and people making sure that you've got enough oxygen to get to the top. Well, your career, your goals, your life, they're your Everest. And trying to tackle all of that without support, that's like trying to climb with no map, no gear, and no backup when things go sideways. It's no wonder you would feel overwhelmed. Having a solid support squad isn't just about making life easier, though it does. It's about making it possible to achieve the things that matter to you without burning out in the process. It's about having people who see your potential, who have your back, and who remind you to breathe when it feels like everything's falling apart and crumbling around you. Burnout loves to isolate you. It whispers you're the only one who can handle this, or worse, you're failing because you're not strong enough. But that's a lie. Burnout thrives in isolation, but recovery happens in community. And that's why these 5 people are so essential. They remind you that your worth isn't tied to how much you can accomplish before you collapse. They hold up a mirror and show you your strengths when you're too tired to see them for yourself. And let's be real, the pace of life and work isn't slowing down anytime soon. If you don't have the right people in your corner, burnout will keep sneaking back in no matter how many bubble baths or yoga classes you take. Building this squad is about more than burnout recovery. It's about burnout prevention. It's about creating a life and career that doesn't just survive, but one that thrives. So here's your homework. And yes, I'm giving you homework because I care about you and I want you to take this seriously. Take 10 minutes today and think about who's got your back. Do you have all 5 of these people in your life? If you do, that's freaking amazing. Text them right now and tell them how much they mean to you. Seriously, keep building that relationship even stronger. But if you don't have these people, look at where's the gap. Are you missing a sponsor? A mentor? Maybe you've got a killer cheerleader, but no coach to help you clarify your next step. That's okay. Just identifying what you're missing is the first step to fixing it. Friend, this doesn't have to be overwhelming. You don't need to have all 5 roles filled by the end of the week. Just take one step today. Send a message to someone you admire and ask for a coffee chat. Book a free consultation with a coach. Hint, hint, I know someone who can help. That'd be me. Or look for ways to be a cheerleader for someone else, because good energy has a way of coming back to you when you least expect it. Here's what I want you to remember. You are not just building a career. You're building a life. A big, beautiful, messy, shit show, balanced, badass life. And the truth is, you can't do it all alone. Nobody can. But the good news is you don't have to do it alone. There are people out there who want to help you succeed, not because they have to, but because they believe in you. Your job is to find them, nurture those relationships, and let them remind you of how incredible you really are, even when burnout tries to convince you otherwise. So go out there, find your people, and don't forget, you've already got everything it takes to be a badass. All you need is the right squad to remind you when you do forget. Okay, real talk for a minute. If you're feeling burned out and stuck, you don't need another pep talk. You need a plan. And that's where the Burnout-Resistant Career Playbook comes in. You can think of it as your step-by-step guide to figuring out what's driving your burnout and to building a career that actually works for you, whether you want to stay in your career or find a new one. And if you're like, where do I even start with this? This playbook has you covered. From pinpointing the deeper causes of burnout to building your dream squad of role models, mentors, cheerleaders, and more. Plus, if you pre-order now, you'll save $20. So what are you waiting for? I'll be sure to add the link in the show notes so you can reserve yours today. I've extended the pre-order to December 15th, 2024, so make sure you grab it. That's it for today, my friend. Go out there, find your squad, and remember, you're doing the damn thing. You're building a life, not just a career. And you're doing it with balance, boundaries, and dare I say, badassery. Thanks for tuning in to the Balanced Badass podcast. If this episode spoke to you, do me a favor. Subscribe, share it with someone who needs to hear it, Or what I would really appreciate is if you leave a review if you're feeling extra generous. Until next time, stay balanced, stay badass, and make good choices. Thanks for hanging out with me on the Balanced Badass podcast. I hope today's episode brought you a little more balance and a lot more badass in your day. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a review. Your support helps more multitaskers like you find the show, and I'd really appreciate it. Until next time, take care of yourself and make good choices, friend. I'll catch you next week.